a couple, just a brief remark. Our staff, I say our staff, the appropriation staff and LBO does a great job, work really hard. For some reason, there is this belief that, we're not going to have, at least the subcommittee that I chair, we're not going to have the budget hearings. Any subcommittee I'm chairing on appropriations, we're going to have a budget hearing and ask the agency to come. So when Christy, Ishii, and the appropriations staff is requesting to have these hearings, it's for a reason, because we want to hear what people have to say, what the agencies need and want, maybe contrary to what people actually believe. But the public also has a right to know what's going on. So just trying to move things along. And when we have these hearings, we're going to have a formal hearing. And when I say formal, I'm talking about like this. So we'll just cut that out and just plan when Christy and them make the request, we're going to have the hearing. So with that, we're going to go to the public safety and the illustrious Commissioner Tyndall. And Commissioner, is always it's always entertaining to hear the budget request. I say that affectionately, but I'm going to turn it over to you, and then the committee will have probably some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee members. And as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, the budget request for DPS is very much that. It's a request. I get together with the various division heads of our agency and say, this is your one time to bring to me things that you might need for the next fiscal year, things that you might want. Let's make the request and understand that we're not going to get everything we asked for, but this is an opportunity to highlight what we've done as an agency and highlight some of the things that we're seeking for the future. So to start off, I'd like to give you a little bit of the highlights from 2024. The Mississippi Capitol Police, which, as y'all know, transferred over to the Department of Public Safety 3 years ago, has been very active. In fiscal year, or in the calendar year of 2024, they made 915 felony arrests. If you'll remember, before they came over to the Department of Public Safety, I think over a 2-year period, they made 3 felony arrests. So obviously they've been very active. It's been a growing department, and one in which the emphasis has been more of a traditional police force instead of that of a security force. As it stands today, they have 159 certified officers, 32 civilian employees, and over the last fiscal year, they received roughly $40,000 40,000 calls for services to which they responded. At the medical examiner's office, as you recall, when we came in 2020, there was a severe backlog, over 2,000 autopsy reports that had not been completed. For fiscal year 2024, we have about 137 autopsy reports that are outstanding. So as we head into the year, I'm sure new year, those are going to be completed. I did want to give you some of these stats that highlight kind of where we are as a state and some of the violent crime trends that we do see. In 2020, there was 551 homicides in our state, autopsy reports done by the ME's office. In 2021, there were 603. In 2022, there was 560 homicides. 2023, there was 516 homicides. And for 2024, we had 433 homicides, autopsies that were done at the medical examiner's office. So I think the good news is we're seeing a downtrend in the number of homicides in our state. Also correlated with that, if you look at the number of suicides that were investigated by the medical examiner's office, that too has gone down from 83 in 2020 to 2024, 45 suicides that were done by the medical examiner's office. So, I think that says a lot, not just about our agency, but public safety across the state, as well as the work done by our mental health professionals.
I'm sorry, that was going to be my question. What do you attribute those trends to?
I think a greater emphasis on public safety. U.S. News and World Reports does its state rankings, Mississippi came in number 17 in the nation in public safety. I think the commitment by this body to help increase salaries for law enforcement and make a greater emphasis on training, I think is having an impact. So I really do believe that at least on that front, we're seeing some of those trends. On the suicide front, I think the talk about mental health and trying to get people better care that have mental health conditions through the Department of Mental Health and other medical attentions have led to a decrease.
I'm sorry, but also the, I guess the autopsies and the history we've had with that and the trends in that.
Well, and the trends there as far as getting those reports done, y'all's commitment to helping us fund the medical examiner's office, bringing on additional staff, taking advantage of things like death investigators, bringing in pathology assistants that are much like nurse practitioners that assist the medical examiners in doing their autopsies. And then the contract doctors that we brought in. One of the things that we faced when we got there, again, with 2,000 autopsy reports outstanding, you're standing in a hole, and if you're just trying to dig yourself out of that hole with a shovel, you're just going to keep digging yourself deeper. What we had to do was find ways to fill that hole, and y'all gave us the resources to hire contract doctors. And we had doctors come in from West Virginia, Texas, other parts of this country that helped us do the autopsy reports. And when we were able to fill in that hole, now we've been able to stay ahead of it and not get deeper. So that's why we don't have the backlog that we did 4 years ago. And so I credit Christy Simmons and Dr. Turner for the work that they've done at the medical examiner's office, turning that around. NBI investigated 31 officer-involved shootings in 2024. In 2023, there was 32 that they did. In 2022, there was 36 reported officer-involved shootings. So we're seeing a consistent number of officer-involved shootings that are being reported by NBI. NBI is growing. We're trying to do a greater job of investigating different kinds of crimes, not just officer-involved shootings at that particular division. Cybersecurity has been very busy with the emphasis on cyber crimes. We have had 39 cyber incidences reported to our agency, K through 12 school cyber training events. We've done over 11. And so we're really trying to get the message out there about cybersecurity when it comes to the Department of Homeland Security. Malota has been very active. We graduated over 1,500 students last year, either basic or highway patrol or advanced training at Malota. So that's been a greater emphasis is on the training of our law enforcement officers. CTED has written over 7,000 citations. That's the MDOT law enforcement division that came over. And so they've been very active, again, trying to make our roads safe when it comes to commercial transportation on our state roads. NBN, again, has been active. We've seen a number of overdose deaths continue to drop some, but stay steady. We had 382 overdose deaths in 2024. They made over 1,200 arrests. They initiated 2,400 different cases. Highway Patrol, again, has been very active, writing numerous citations, investigating numerous fatal car accidents. I think we had over 290 fatal car accidents in our state. I will emphasize that Mississippi is routinely number 1 or 2 in the nation in fatality rates on our roadways. So I do think it's very important that we have the adequate number of highway patrolmen out trying to ensure safety on our highways and interstates and our state roads. We do anticipate having a patrol school coming up starting in January. Our goal is to graduate 65 cadets from that particular class. So highway patrol is growing and again, doing things that I think are very important. I would like to say, and this is something that comes up frequently, and I'm getting it more and more frequently, even from legislators and leaders. Lieutenant governors reached out on behalf of local communities that are needing more help from the state police, whether it's NBN, Highway Patrol, or NBI, Homeland Security, trying to help and assist particularly smaller counties that are seeing a greater increase in crime and don't have the resources to respond to that. And so it's really a trend I've seen over the last year or two, those requests coming in, and we want to be able to facilitate them. but we also get stretched thin with the numbers that we have right now. So as we think about the future of Highway Patrol and we think about the future of our agency, I think it's important to keep a mind towards being able to provide greater resources to local departments, particularly the smaller ones that sometimes face criminal elements that they're not adequately equipped to deal with themselves. So again, I just wanted to bring that to y'all's attention that when we look at increasing the numbers at NBI or NBN, some of that's to answer the call for local departments that might need that additional help. So for our budget request, we've requested an additional for the 2026 fiscal year, 22 million overall for our agency. And we've also requested state support or special funds of another 41 million. And some of those are capital expense projects. Some of them are cars or one-time money. But the year-over-year increase is 22 million. And I'll go through each of those respective divisions with you right now. For Highway Patrol, again, as I mentioned, we're looking to start a new patrol school here this fiscal year. We've been seeing about an average number of retirees of about 30 every year. We also have departures from the agency, 10 to 15 a year. So we've really been breaking even over the last 4 to 5 years with the patrol schools that we've had. We've actually maintained about the same number of troopers overall. We're trying to grow that trend so that we'll have some additional officers, particularly with this patrol school. So for that, 45 new troopers, we've asked for an additional $4.3 million in salary for those new troopers. We've also requested some money for additional software. One of the things that we face is, as an older agency, one that's been around a long time, just coming along with the times and making sure that we're using technology as best as we can. Ammunition, we're wanting to go to quarterly training with our firearms instead of doing it twice a year, going to 4 times a year. And we feel like that's important, especially with the threats that these officers face out in the field each and every day. So the total increase for Highway Patrol is 4.5 million. As I mentioned, a bulk of that is the new positions for the new cadets coming out of this class. 7-Eleven, which is our support services division, something that we've tried to grow since I've been there to make sure that we can have the backroom services that can answer the needs for Capitol Police and the additional divisions that we have. We're also seeking some additional personnel there, 3 specialized trade workers and a government asset specialist to help us keep up with all the inventory that we have coming and going. We're going to try to do a better job of training and recruiting across the agency. So we've asked for some additional money for that, particularly for the travel. And most of that I will say is in-state travel, not going out of state. It's about recruiting individuals in our state to come work at the Department of Public Safety. Contractual services, we desperately need a new timekeeping system. We still keep time by hand. Everybody fills out a manual timesheet, turns it in, then our folks manually put it into our HR, and that's how time is kept up with. We're wanting to acquire a digital timekeeping system, so that'll save time and resources for the manual input of that information. And lastly, and this would be special funds, we need some additional money to complete the headquarters project, including the parking lot and furniture and equipment for the headquarters. We hope to be in by the end of the year, but we're going to need about another $8.2 million to get us across the finish line and get us into the new headquarters. And that's numbers that came from the Department of Finance and Administration. And so I'm relying on them to tell us what we need there.
Just curious, did we not account for that when we were making previous requests?
I think so. And, again, here we are, and I'm just, I guess,
You're the message.
relaying the message that we're a little short of what we need. And so, I've kind of likened it to Brewster's Millions. If you've ever seen that movie, when he finally spends his last dollar and says, "This is an office I could die in," and then he moves out, that's probably going to be the scenario for me at DPS the day we actually get into the headquarters building. So, I want to get in there before I leave this position that I've been honored to serve in. So I'm hoping to get it across the finish line at the end of this year, and we can look towards 2026.
But I'll just on a serious note, that completes that, should that happen, that completes.
That completes.
All need.
That completes it. I mean, we're in there at that point. Our goal is to be in there by the end of the year. Of course, this is the parking lot and furniture that's going to get us across the finish line. I'm not going to tell you we'll never come back and ask for additional things. In my dream world, I'd love to see us have a statewide real-time crime center located at headquarters. And there's a variety of reasons that I feel like that could be important, but one of which is school safety. With the technology that we have today, every school in this state could live feed from their cameras into the statewide real-time crime center so that if we ever did have an active shooter situation, we could pull it up on our cameras instantaneously and relay to law enforcement where those shooters are in a particular school. So yes, I think in the future there will be technology upgrades like that, but this will get us in the building. And again, one of the great things about the headquarters is we are the Department of Public Safety. We have 6 different law enforcement divisions. We have other divisions related to public safety. They have never been under one roof. And if we're ever going to start operating like, let's say, the Texas Department of Public Safety, where it operates as one agency, that's what it's going to take, is having NBN working side by side with NBI and Homeland Security and Highway Patrol working side by side with CTED to help ensure safety on our highways and roadways. And the way we do that is putting everybody under one roof. So I think it's critical, and I think it's a great project and one in which will have greater benefit for the state in the years to come. The crime lab, we are asking for some additional funds there. We're asking for additional money for another medical examiner and a pathology assistant, primarily for the anticipated opening of the North Mississippi Medical Examiner's Office in Oxford. And we also want to bring some of the positions at the crime lab to market. And also we need 2 additional personnel to handle the sexual assault kits law that y'all passed a couple of years ago, where we have to analyze every sexual assault kit that's turned in at the local departments has to be analyzed by the crime lab. And so we need some additional assistance to handle that workload. Support operations, another $426,000 there. For some of our justice tracks upgrades and our software that keeps up with all our cases coming in. One of the big law asks, and this is for the backlog of cases at the crime lab itself, the drug analysts, the cases that are sitting there that are incomplete, much like what we did with the medical examiner's office, we're wanting to do with the forensics lab and contract out a bulk of these backlog, because otherwise I don't see us ever being able to dig out of the hole we're in with the personnel we have. So if we can get some capital expense funds to help knock out that backlog, we feel like we can level off and stay ahead of it for the future. We are entering into agreements with local jurisdictions. We've been meeting with Harrison County about ways that they can basically pay for somebody to come work at our crime lab that will primarily work on their cases so that the other people that we have at our agency can work on the rest of the state. And you take a county like Harrison County that sends in a lot of drug submissions, it helps everybody if they bear some of that workload on getting their cases done. But getting rid of that backlog is going to be critical. We need to do something with the HVAC systems at Batesville and Biloxi. So we've requested some money to redo the HVAC systems there. And some of the other increases just deal with contractual obligations and outdated equipment that we might need for the future. One of the neat pieces of equipment, and I'll mention this to y'all now, and technology is expensive, but it can provide critical assets. We do have a couple of items called a Pharaoh, and we use them at crime scenes, and they will map out the entire crime scene to the smallest centimeter. And so it's a fascinating piece of equipment. We're doing a project with the manufacturer of that piece of equipment right now where we're actually using it in autopsy reports, trying to see how well it can scan the body so that in the future, if somebody's buried, we don't have to bring that body back out. And also at trial, you can do a 3D image of the body itself and have a display that the jury can look at so you could see bullet wounds, and other causes of death and display that to the jury without necessarily having to show them photos of the deceased. So it's a fascinating piece of equipment and something that we're looking to obtain in the future. Melota officer, and I mentioned the number of graduates that we've had out in Melota. They're really doing a fine job out there training our law enforcement. There is a request for some additional personnel there. We also need some work on the HVAC system at Melota, including the dorm rooms and the classrooms. If you've been there, it can be quite moldy at times. So we've requested some additional money for that. Moving over into our Driver Services Bureau, we're looking to try to bring more of the pay plan into effect. We need an additional 200,000 for that. We've asked for some additional money, $8,000 for travel. We're finding that you're having to go across the state, continue training, keep us on the path we have been, where we're keeping these lines small, 15 minutes, about our average wait time in our driver service station. Still, we've been able to maintain that. We do have our building lease in Canton. It's year 5 of that lease, which will be the last year coming up. That's 1.2 million. After that, we'll own the building for $1. We also, anticipation of moving out of the headquarters, we've secured a lease for a building on State Street, the old LaFleur's Cadillac building, which will be the new driver service station for Jackson and Hinds County. That's a $72,000 a year lease. So when we get done, we'll have a driver service station in Madison, in Canton, which with all the growth up there is critical. We'll have a driver service station here in Jackson, and we'll have the one out in Pearl as well. The big ask here, and again, this is a capital expense fund, our software system that we entered into in 2012 with IDEMIA, it's coming to an end of life, and it's a time in which we need to put it out for bid for a new software system for our driver service stations. That will expire in 2027, but we need to start the bid process really now, because it's going to take a year to 14 months. So at the end of the fiscal year 2026, we would need to at least be able to obligate a certain amount of money to fulfill the requirements of whatever that bid comes in at. And so we're asking for $11 million so that we can get that contract underway at the end of the 2026 fiscal year. We do have some driver testing software that we've requested, $550,000 for that. One of the big things that y'all passed last year that I think is absolutely critical, and I thank you, it's very important, is the driver's education requirements for our state, that every new driver has to take driver's education. There are some costs affiliated with that, but when I look at the number of teenage drivers that die on our roadway, and we're routinely, again, number 1 or 2 in the nation, I think we got to do something. And I looked at the stats for last year. We had 36 teenage drivers. That didn't include passengers and other people in the vehicle that died on our roadways. And I just have to remind everybody, what would we do if we had a school where 36 students were shot and killed? What lengths will we go to protect and save their lives? So when I think about our teenage drivers and requiring that driver's education, how important is that, and how many lives does it save over the years if we have better drivers on our roadways? Another request that we have is 2 vehicles. One of the things that we're trying it on an experimental basis, we found the money to do it, is mobile driver's license stations. And the thought is, when you have an event like Rolling Fork, where people have lost all their driver's licenses and personal information, being able to take a mobile driver's license station and show up at an event like that to help people get their critical documents and driver's licenses back. Or if we find somewhere where we can go into some of the smaller communities that don't have driver service stations, and we can set up there for a day or 2 and let the folks in those communities know that we're here to help renew their driver's licenses. We think that could be an important asset for the Driver Services Bureau. And finally, at Troop G, we're close to getting the new troop station in Starkville done. We need an additional 1.1 million for some of the driver services functions there, primarily a CDL pad that we're looking to put down there so that we can test CDL drivers at that particular driver service station. And I know I'm going through a lot. Y'all know it's a big agency with a lot of different divisions. MBI, again, we're wanting to add personnel there. As you know, we made a change that not all MBI agents no longer have to be highway patrolmen. We've started hiring outside investigators from other agencies. that have come in as experienced investigators, and they've very much been a value add to the Mississippi Bureau of Investigations. And I will say, as a side note to that, one of the things that I was proud of, we were able to add, of the 10 new agents that we brought in under that plan, 5 of them were female. So we I think doubled or tripled the number of female MBI agents we had. And I was very proud of that. And we want to continue to be able to add those types of agents to MBI. We're also seeking some money to add some additional software, as I mentioned, some joint intelligence software, trying to increase our standards and training, and also travel for MBI, because these agents get called out to all parts of the state and they're traveling a lot, and that's going to be important. Equipment, we're seeking some additional money for cars, vests, and things like that through our special funds and maybe capital expense funds for MBI. Capitol Police, we're asking for a large number of increase for salary so that we can add 46 additional law enforcement officers. As y'all know, continue to expand the CCID district lines. It's become a bigger district. It's adding additional households. That's a lot more coverage that we have to do for traditional law enforcement needs. In the beginning, it was primarily a business area, business district, capital, government buildings areas. Now we're expanding into Northeast Jackson more, and there's more residential houses, which brings a variety of different calls that we have to respond to and additional personnel that is needed. So that is the large bulk of that. Support operations, obviously travel, lifts, keeping up with the cars, duty belts, all the equipment that we need. Vehicles for those additional officers is $2.5 million. And then the Hinds County Detention Center has come out and said that they're going to charge us $50 a day per person that we arrest and put in the Hinds County Detention Center. The cost of that is about $1.8 million. That's nothing unique for Hinds County. Most counties charge municipalities for housing the detainees that those cities bring to their detention facility. So for us, and based on the number of arrests and the average number of days that they stay in jail, it would be about $1.8 million to meet that requirement from the Hinds County Detention Facility. Bureau of Narcotics, trying to bring the non-sworn personnel there to market is additional $212,000. CTED is requesting an additional $605,000 for their pay scale adjustment. And also another $325,000 to make some repairs to the way stations, as well as additional training. The Office of Public Safety and Planning, which houses the Office of Standards and Training, where the Board of Law Enforcement Officer Standards and Training does its work, is asking for $83,000 to bring their folks to market. We're also seeking some software called Arcadius Readiness, which will help us keep up. As you know, with the Office of Standards and Training and Belost, they maintain all the records for every law enforcement officer in the state. Again, that's something that's just been done with a physical file. What we're trying to do with the Arcadius program is have a software program so that things can be sent in digitally, maintained digitally, and we'll have a better records keeping system with that. The vehicles line that we request, it's a 50% match. There's actually federal funds that will help us pay for the vehicle. So we'll get another $80,000 from the match on that. Office of Homeland Security, we're seeking to add additional positions to deal with the cybersecurity. That's been a big emphasis of the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker's office, trying to prepare the state for its cyber defense measures. We've also requested, and again in special funds, $3.5 million. That is a software program, a cyber defense program. If you think about things like at home, your Norton software programs and things that every business has to pay for to protect their assets, we're seeking those funds to buy a statewide system to help protect the critical assets of the state. They've also asked for some additional money for computers, printers, scanners, technical equipment. Also $120,000 for some new vehicles. That amount covers the entirety of our requests. You can see I've added a couple of pictures. Our Troop G Substation is underway, our station there. We hope to have it up and operational. You also see some pictures of the new headquarters building and the progress there. The shell is done, the outside's done. They're continuing to work on the inside, and hopefully, again, we'll be there at the end of the year and I can prop my feet up and say we did it.
Thank you. I'm gonna at this time turn it over to committee members. Senator DeBar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, I got two thank yous. First off, and before I get to the questions, as you're well aware, we had that triple homicide in State Line on New Year's Day, and your agents, your MBI agents, came down there to the crime scene really quickly and took charge of that. And this perpetrator is still on the loose, but we appreciate your agency, MBI agents, getting down there very quick like they did. The second thank you is I reached out to you, I think it was December, about all the juvenile gang activity in Waynesboro. And my chiefs of police and sheriff and the EA met with MEMA from your agency last night, Homeland Security, excuse me, had a good meeting. And I think your agency is going to provide some assistance there. And so I thank you for that. None of my questions. You touched briefly on the driver education piece on the bill you with your leadership we passed last year. Have you worked with the Department of Education on that? And I think you said you're only asking for 550,000, or how is that going? And is there anything we need to do fiscally for you on that?
So we've been meeting with the Department of Education. Our staff have been having teams meeting, trying to put together the policies and procedures and try to come up with some sort of cost that can be presented to y'all, particularly through the educational piece. And we had a good meeting last night. I met with Dr. Evans and we discussed some of the options that we might be able to do. One of the things that I would ask this body and the legislature to consider is setting up a driver's education special fund. I don't know if that would consist of, maybe adding a few dollars to every ticket that would go into funding driver's education programs. I know it's going to take some money to implement, particularly for the driving simulators that we'll need to purchase for the schools as well as the cars, and as well as for those that are adults that have never gotten a driver's license, being able to put them through some sort of driver's education program. We're working on the price for that so that we can bring you a reasonable number. I know pulling that out of the general fund might be a difficult request, particularly with the number of requests that you get. But if we can set up some sort of special fund that would help pay for those things, I think that could be critical. For us, it's more about the testing itself. And the testing software that we use for learners permits, where these individuals come in and take their test to get their permit. But the driver's education part of it's going to be an expense for the cars and the simulators that we're going to need to get these students. And again, I go back to us being number 1 or 2 in the nation in teenage fatalities each and every year, and just the number of lives that we can save. And I know my son got involved in a wreck. I had my knee replacement August 14th. I think on the 15th, he got in a wreck on Highway 90. Senator Hobson, I know, you've gotten that same call, and it's very scary when we see our young children engaged in these accidents. And I can't help but think if we could do a better job teaching them to be better defensive drivers, how many of those things could be avoided? So,
thank you. The next question is, I've been concerned about the safety and security of our Capitol and our public buildings throughout the state. And the events of January 1st only enhanced those concerns. How is your agency prepared for prevention, deterrence, and reaction to any threats? And do you see the need for any increase in appropriations to meet the demand or possible potential threats that we may be facing?
It is very much a concern. And one of the things that I've tried to emphasize when I talk to folks about that incident, bad people are going to figure out ways to do bad things. And so we've got to be able to respond quickly. One of the most impressive moments of that incident was as soon as that car made its way through that gap, you saw 6 police officers take off after it. As soon as that car stopped and that individual got out, those officers minimized that threat relatively quickly. Could have been a lot worse. So I appreciate the work that those law enforcement officers did in that particular situation, not allowing that situation to be any worse than it was. One of the things that's important is obviously intel analysts and sharing information and tracking these types of events. Homeland Security and our Fusion Center and NBI, they all do a great job trying to communicate with other agencies and share information. We can do better. And I think that's one of the things the new headquarters is going to bring. The other part of it that I think is critical is sending out the message, particularly to family members. If you've got somebody that's going into a dark place that is following extremism groups and things of that nature, don't be afraid to let law enforcement know. Don't be afraid to call a hotline. Don't be afraid to let individuals know, and don't feel like you're betraying that family member's trust by doing it. If anything, you're protecting them, and you might be saving the lives of others if we can stop them from getting to that particular point. Technology is going to play an important role in this future. Our ability to put up cameras, monitor actions, watch the bad players. I was just reading an FBI report this morning about that incident and things that we need to be looking at. Trends that we need to be following, rental cars agreements, what kind of cars are being rented, what kind of information can we get? And so I think it's going to be a constant education on how we can help prevent these types of things in the future. And you talked about your local sheriff and the state line and the request to have state law enforcement come in and assist. I think we're going to see more and more of that. And one of the challenges I face, and I'm kind of going off a little bit here, but Highway Patrol has a long legacy of patrolling our highways and making them safe. And that started in 1938. The reality is some of those needs are going to change over the next 20 years. The first 18-wheeler that doesn't have a driver in it will probably be coming through this state in February of this year. It'll be coming from Dallas to Atlanta. It's going to be an automated vehicle. In 20, 30 years from now, we'll see more and more vehicles that will drive themselves. So some of those needs might change for the Highway Patrol, but what's not going to change is we're going to have bad guys. And I want our good guys chasing those bad guys. And I think what we're training them for is going to have to change a little bit, and we need to be prepared, not maybe so much for the Highway Patrol enforcement, but how to stop these types of events and assist local law enforcement through more of a state police model that you see with Texas, Louisiana, and other states that are going to that.
So at this point, you feel confident that you've got sufficient resources to handle the potential threats out there, or is there something you need in addition to what you're asking? If so, how much is that going to cost?
I think with the request for particularly the software and the intelligence software that we're requesting and the $20 million in here, I think we'll go a long way towards that. And the additional personnel, I wish I could tell you that we had such great safeguards, no matter what we did, we were able to protect, but that's unrealistic expectation. And we're going to do the best we can each and every day. Now, I will tell you at the Capitol, we got the gates going. We've got some new software that we're trying that'll help pick up anybody bringing in firearms or knives that are not, might be illegal, or at least we'll know who's coming in and be able to tell those kind of things. I think the real-time crime center, the statewide real-time crime center, ultimately will be a great thing. It's just going to cost some money, and we're going to have to bring you those proposals when they get here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner, thank you for being here. Two questions. One is related to I saw the Hinds County Detention Center in here having you had a request for that. What's the present state of the detention of arrestees from the Capitol Police?
We do take some to, I think, Rankin County and primarily Hinds County. In the past, they weren't charging us for that. I think, sometimes you do a good job and you have to pay a price for it. And you look at the number of arrests from several years ago, that might have been why they weren't charging us. When you're making 3 felony arrests, now you're making 900. But we have been keeping them at Hinds County. I believe we do have they sent us any bills for that yet, or they just send us the letter? Okay, they have just sent us the letter saying we're going to start charging you $50 a day, but we haven't gotten a bill for that yet.
Okay, we can follow up on that some more. The other was the trooper school. You and I talked about this, that we maybe this is a personal opinion, but it's based on information that I've received from years ago when I first got elected, and that is we probably don't need a trooper school every year. At some point, the pipeline ought to be filled up enough, and you're retaining enough officers that you don't need to hire 65 troopers every year. Are we getting close to that? What are our numbers right now? And it'd be nice to get to a place where we're having a trooper school every 2 or 3 or 4 years. We even talked when I first got elected about once every 4 years would be a good number. I know it got so low on the numbers that you had to redo that, but how close are we getting to a place where we don't have to have a trooper school every single year?
Before you answer, my New Year's resolution is to stay on time, and you got 5 minutes based on our
And
schedule.
you can answer that in 30 seconds. I hope.
And that's going for everything. So
So, and we've had a trooper school every year since 2018, and our numbers have stayed about the same. What we're seeing is a number of retirees, folks retiring. It's kind of keeping up with the number of folks that we're bringing in, and folks that leave to go work at Texas DPS or depart the agency, whether either through termination or resignation, that go on to other places. We've stayed about even. I've felt like in this body, a long time ago, set the cap at about 650. At one time, we were around 600. That has dropped. I would like to see us get to that 600 number so that we can have the coverage that we need, understanding that a lot of your highway patrolmen go on to go to MBI, executive protection, or MBN, or other divisions of our agency. One of the things that I would truly love to see, and I think we need to have a school every year, because of what I would love to see, MHP does a very good job of vetting its candidates. They do a very good job of having a career path and a career structure for all those that come into the agency. And they do a very good job of training those that come to MHP. Maybe I'm just dreaming, but what I would love to see is us have a DPS academy where everybody that comes into our agency, whether you're an MBN agent, a Capitol Police agent, a CTED officer, or a highway patrolman, goes through an academy that's held annually so that we can ensure the quality and standards that we bring into highway patrol, or the quality and standards that we bring to every law enforcement officer that is a member of the Department of Public Safety. And if you look at what LSP does, if you look at what Texas DPS does, if you look at what other states are doing, that's how they're approaching it. So when you look at it, just not from the highway patrol perspective, but one of the state law enforcement perspective, where we'll have 1,000 law enforcement officers working at DPS, we will need the ability to have that type of school and then assign them out to their respective divisions as needed.
thank you. And then we got 2 minutes. My last question is you mentioned the standards and trainings. We did that bill last year. Is there a brief update on where that stands?
Yes, the revised board has been meeting. In fact, we're meeting Thursday morning for our monthly meetings, and we've hired the 2 investigators, so they're out doing a better job with this new software that we're seeking to get. We'll actually be able to get more information. So I think the board is heading in the right direction. Somebody told me once, very wise, that I think it takes 2 or 3 miles to get a large ship to turn around. It's going to take a little bit of time to get it where it needs to be. But with the new director out there, the new software, the new investigators, we're hoping that we're going to be able to keep a better eye and have better supervision over law enforcement as far as people going from agency to agency and the ones that don't need to be in that profession. So I think they're doing a really, really good job with that. And I'm anxious about the future and what it's going to bring.
Commissioner, thank you very much. It's always, like you said, it's a big agency, and we like to, there's a lot of improvement going on, to say the least. So appreciate that.
Thank y'all. And I
Thank you.
appreciate, again, all that y'all have done. I do appreciate my staff that's here. I've got Chief of Staff Alan McDaniels, our budget analyst, Deb Coleman, as well as our Deputy Commissioner of Internal Operations, Liza Hammond, and they do a great job each and every day keeping our agency going forward. So I thank y'all and the rest of the members of the Department of Public Safety.
And hope you're running a marathon pretty soon on the new knees.
Knees are good. The knees are good.
All right. Thank you. Our next will be judicial performance. Okay, and the judicial performance, and I'm gonna ask you when you're giving your presentation, go ahead and mention the youth court. You may have already planned on that, but
Did. Yes, sir.
I know y'all have sent that to me. Go ahead and mention that.
Yes, sir.
Maybe that's what is on your sheet here, so,
That's in the blue. Yes, sir.
okay.
Good morning or afternoon, you all. I am Rachel Wilson. I'm the Executive Director of Judicial Performance Commission. We also have our, one of our staff attorneys, Sherry DeWolf, with me here this afternoon as well. The important numbers, because you all know I like to cut right to the chase, the important numbers are the distinctions between the elbow recommendation of the $752 and change $1,000 and our request shows that if you use our current salary amount total of $733,467 and you subtract that from the 752, we're looking at an operating budget of about 20 grand, just shy of 20 grand for an entire year, which clearly it isn't going to work. At present, even if all that we did was keep an office open, that would have us coming back for a deficit amount of 41.4 in a deficit appropriation. That's the number, the first number in red in the last column. That's assuming that we don't investigate any additional complaints, we don't get any new complaints, we don't try any cases, and we don't try the 8 cases that are presently on our docket. I do want to speak just a moment, if I could, about the 8 cases that are presently on our docket. It takes roughly $5 grand, between a low of 3, a high of 8, but let's just call it a $5 grand in expenses to try one of our cases. That includes the subpoenas, that includes the witness, the travel, all of the things, and the court reporter, if we can find one these days. So all of those things cost to try a case for us. We have 8 of them presently on our docket. So if you look at that number, if you want us to just catch up the cases that we currently have on our docket and pay our expenses, then you're looking at a deficit of $81,000 that we would be coming back and asking you for. Obviously, we're going to need those numbers increased. In addition to that, we currently have 2 of the 8 cases that are on our docket that involve an allegation of diminished capacity or mental incompetency of some sort. Well, certainly I've got to have an expert witness to prove those things. So those cost from a low of $3,500, that's just doing one exam one time, which certainly isn't sufficient for a complex judicial case, to a high of $10,000 or $15,000 per case. I currently have 2, and there seems to be an upward trend of that number of
Go ahead and then I'll ask.
of the complaints regarding diminished capacity. Yes, sir.
Well, that's the number 8. Is that a normal? Where is that in a range? Is that low, high, or normal?
It's a little high. It is a little high right now.
And in the diminished capacity, you're saying you're seeing an increase on that.
We are seeing an increase on that since I have been at the commission, which is not quite 10 years. We have had 2 others prior to now, but right now we have two of those 8 that are set to go to trial that are diminished capacity. As we sit here right now, there are currently allegations in the initial complaint stage of diminished capacity that have not yet gone before the commission for an initial review to determine if it is in fact a viable allegation and if it even needs to be investigated. And if at the investigation it's determined that, yeah, it probably is a legitimate issue, having met the probable cause standard, then we would incur the same cost on those cases as well.
Let's be frank, that gets when you get to an age, is that correct? And I'm just going to say, because I'm familiar with this area, but I know on the medical side, if you're a surgeon or whatever, they make it, once you hit 70 or 71 or 72, it's very hard because of such things.
So the allegations that are presently, these two, one is age-related, the other is not necessarily age-related, but it may be maybe increased, exacerbated by age.
Gotcha.
But candidly, the bar is typically a little bit older than the rest of the people who practice. I'm sorry, the bench is typically a little bit older than the bar. And I don't mean Senator DeBar, I mean the bar on there. Let me make sure I'm clear on that. I
He
didn't
may
call
be
him old.
diminished, but no.
I neither called him nor I neither called him old, nor did I call him diminished. But yes, sir, there seems to be an upward trend in that. And my interpretation of that is probably age-related, yes, sir. But I don't have definitive information that I could say for certain that that is the case. Having said that, the two numbers in yellow highlight at the top, the 206, 202 is the number of increase that we need from the elbow recommendation to actually do the job that we have for the 8 cases and continue to do the job that we have investigating new complaints, taking those to trial, having additional medical or psychological evaluations as needed, doing our mission is the bottom line for that. Having said that, I now want to go into the area of what I call a good idea fairy sighting, and that is knowing that there are issues or at least concerns of issues with regard to youth courts, and knowing that there have been some concerns that you all, the general public doesn't know if there are problems in youth court because we don't know what's going on in youth court.
Well, I'm going to help you out there, and for the benefit of the committee, because I think this is important. Since last session, a lot has come out about the youth courts. We had the task force report that came. The AOC has put in a staffer to oversee youth courts. The bottom line is this: as we've begun looking at it, there are issues. We passed some legislation last year. The fact of the matter is there are issues in our youth court system. And y'all have come forward with the idea of this to look at the youth court. I will, for the benefit of the committee, there will be legislation coming forward this year to address our youth courts. The bottom line is, they needed to be looked at. And when we started looking at it, we've uncovered stuff. And so judicial performance certainly can assist in that realm. That's what your request is on that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So to me, it's more than a good idea. It is based in fact about what we're hearing that's going on. So with that, I just wanted to say that to let everybody know.
Thank you. And just to clarify specifically what we're asking for, currently we have 5 personnel pins. What we are asking for is an additional 1 pin to give us a total of 6. And that pin would have to be, you see the number is not a small number, that pin would have to be an experienced litigation attorney who is familiar with youth court. Youth court is a different animal, and as you all have uncovered, it's a different animal depending on what county you're in, depending on where you are in the state, all of those things. So to have someone who is an experienced litigator who is familiar, and in fact, very familiar with youth court, being able to look at what's going on in the youth courts, we're going to have to pay. And that number, of course, has the fringes included in it as well. That
Be a temporary positions
Well,
or permanent?
we'll take a permanent, certainly, but what I thought initially is funded as a temporary permanent, if you will. So for 2 years, 3 years, X amount of time, you all give judicial performance an additional pin specifically for that. And that person, not to say that that person wouldn't, unjam the copier if that's what happens, if that's what's needed in the office, but primarily they will look at youth courts. And whereas the rest of us take pride in not hiding in bushes and looking for judges to do something wrong, this person would in fact go focusing on the investigative portion to see what actually is going on, getting a clear view of what is going on in youth courts. And then as instances of misconduct are uncovered, obviously those are prosecuted within our office, as would any other case be.
So let me ask this. So speaking with the analyst, LBO cut the pen by 1. Were you familiar with that?
I did
Cut
not,
y'all's pens by 1.
to
So if you
only
have
give
a
us 4.
5, you have 4.
I did not notice that.
That's why they're the budget analysts.
It-
So,
No math on the final. That's why I went to law school.
so if I under your request then would be to restore that pen, first of all,
Yes, sir.
then to add another pen.
That's right.
Yes. Okay.
And we do currently have 5 employees.
Well, but LBR's recommendation was to have 4, right?
Cutting 1.
Cutting 1.
Was there a specific one that, is it mine? Should I be worried?
No, yeah, I think what they're saying is, it's a snapshot in time, and LBR felt like there was not, I guess it wasn't justified, but that's why we have these hearings. Back to my original comment, this is why
Yes, sir.
we have these hearings. And what I hear you saying is, with your 8 pending matters and all that plus youth court, that's not what y'all would like.
No, sir. We absolutely
You actually
use,
have the work that justifies that pen is
Yes, sir.
what you're saying.
yes, sir. And of course, that isn't the soul of what we do. We don't just investigate and prosecute the cases. We also take what I call a more of a community policing approach. We teach all of the CJEs, all the continuing judicial ethics education courses in conjunction with Judicial College, so that there is a relationship between the judges and those of us at Judicial Performance. I frequently say, if you want to get to the right answer, here's my personal cell phone number. And if you don't, then I'm not sorry. And you get what you get. That's kind of the mantra, so that we actually get judges who are doing the right things and following the canons, because that ultimately gives a better product to people who come before the courts.
It's the checks and balance. You're the check and the balance to the judicial system, in other words.
That perhaps may be the nicest thing that's said about me, but yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Any questions from the committee? All right. That's
And-
good for us.
And
Yes.
to be clear, if we add the pen, if we keep the 5 and add the pen, that increased number would be 329,202.
I'm sorry, which number?
The second highlighted at the top of the page. If you all
Oh, okay.
allow us to keep the 5 and add the 1, then that would be an increase to the elbow recommendation of 329,202.
Okay. I got you. Okay. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Good to see you all.
Good. We're moving right along on time. The Attorney General's is next. I got you. Okay, there you go. Okay. I got you. That's right. I should have said that, but
No, it's okay. Yeah.
hello, General Fitch. if y'all would just, we're keep moving on time, so we're gonna, yeah, right there. That would, oh. Are you okay? Here. That right there is fine. If you want to stand at the podium, that's fine too. People do it differently. Thank you. So I'll just, while Gregory's handing that out, I had mentioned earlier, we were trying to stay on time. So 2:30 is the exit. And we are, it's our practice to definitely have budget hearings this time of year. So when Christie and them are scheduling, we're having hearings on that. So with that, we've heard, so General Fitch, I'm going to turn it over to you. And see, I guess Chairman Hobson stepped out. So your presentation, and then we'll have questions. Oh, yeah. There you
Now
go.
it finally came out. Okay. Certainly pleased to be with you this afternoon to discuss fiscal year 2026 budget requests for the Attorney General's office. And I certainly appreciate the opportunity to share with you what this office has been doing to fulfill our duties as the chief legal and law enforcement entity for the state. I'm very grateful for the trust the people of Mississippi have bestowed upon me to lead this agency, an agency of dedicated public servants. I'm also very grateful for the strong support of this body. It means a lot. It's given us in carrying out our vital responsibilities. As you know, we have requested an overall decrease in our budget.
I was just noticing that.
Good sign right off the bat of nearly $1 million. We certainly take our responsibility very seriously as being prudent stewards of the tax-paying public dollars. I mean, as seriously as our responsibilities for upholding law and order, for upholding the state's laws and constitution, and securing justice for our criminal acts. In reviewing our mission, programs, and staffing requirements, we believe we can achieve our goals with an overall budget that is $902,000 smaller than our fiscal year 2025 budget. You'll note, however, that even as we accomplish this reduction, we increase our funding for our salary by $1.5 million.
General, I'm sorry, let me apologize. Is that decrease is overall budget? Our
Yes.
general funds increased, the request, or
No,
level?
sir. No, sir. So it's a decrease, and then we come back and we ask for our 1.5 million in our salary line.
Okay.
And I'd like to explain why that is so significant. Because our agency is professionals driven. It's an agency that makes up the state's largest law firm. We're one of the state's top law enforcement agencies. 2/3 of our team are attorneys and sworn law enforcement. We don't expect to be competitive with private industry, but we must have adequate funding for retention and recruitment. Our pay capabilities must encompass the ability to fund our sound salary progressions. If we're going to ask for talented lawyers to come work with us, we've got to be sure that we're able to pay them. You know, it simply can't be ignored that the starting salaries at several law firms in our state are over and above the highest paid attorney in our office. Let me repeat that because I think it's a very important point. Right now, a 25-year-old brand new associate coming out of law school that just passed the bar makes more than the experienced, skilled attorneys who represent you, who represent the agencies and public officials of this state, who defend the laws that you pass, and who protect the interests of the people of the state of Mississippi. Over the past year, the Attorney General's office has lost over 30 of our vital team members, and they left primarily for higher pay not only in the private sector, but for other state agencies. While SEC2 has been a tremendous help with staffing and retention, and I want to commend the State Personnel Board. They've done a tremendous job on this large undertaking. It has exposed some real issues, though, with salary progression. As I noted in my budget request letter that I sent last month, of the 125 attorneys that currently work at the AG's office, only 25 make at least the SEC2 market rate, only 25. And these are mostly our Attorney 1 and our Attorney 2 positions. Our most experienced, our most talented lawyers, and the vast majority of all of our attorneys are paid below the level the Personnel Board has labeled as market rate. We have similar issues with our sworn law enforcement officers as well. And these men and women are willing to put their talents to the state service, knowing full well that they're sacrificing pay that they can earn elsewhere. But I think it's such a testament to their dedication for public service. So we should be able to reward them for their work. They have absolutely earned this. And again, while I'm asking for an increase in our salary line of around $1.5 million, overall I've asked for a decrease in funds. And at the very least, I would ask you to consider to give us agency flexibility to move funds from other parts of our budget so that we can prioritize our appropriation to salaries when needed. Given the vital importance of the staff at the Attorney General's office, I'd like to share with you some of what this team has just accomplished with just under 300 individuals in the last year. It's amazing. I mean, we certainly are the chief legal office for the state of Mississippi. At any given time, we have between 124 and 130 attorneys at the agency. And in 2020, we began to add paralegals. We saw this as an opportunity to add to our team to support our lawyers, to give them the opportunity to make the highest value of use of their time. We work in both civil and criminal matters in both the state and federal courts. We provide legal counsel for, again, boards, agencies, commissions, even in the administrative process. You can see we have a wide breadth of what we do. You know, by constitution, by statute, common law, the Attorney General is charged with managing all litigation on behalf of the state. When an agency or an official is sued in an official capacity, it's an action against the state, an action against the people of Mississippi, and against how the people's government has chosen to act in law or otherwise. So it's the duty of this office to represent the state and the state's interests. At any given time, the Civil Litigation Division has more than 300 active cases, which is significant. And with the addition of our Solicitor General's shop, which we added in 2020, we're able to add a small team with a specialized practice in appellate law. So together, these two divisions include no more than 16 attorneys, and we tout a 96% success rate in favor of the state that have been closed in favor of the state. That is incredible. Let me give you a couple of examples. For example, we have successfully defended the 340B prescription drug law that you passed last year against 4 separate challenges. All of these were brought by some of the best funded pharmaceutical companies. They were represented by some of the largest and most powerful law firms in the country. But as a result of victories in court, that law went into effect just as you passed it. And Mississippi's hospitals and the people that they serve, particularly those in the rural areas and the hard-to-reach communities, they can now have access to life-saving medicines at more affordable prices. But as you would expect, they appealed it, and our Solicitor General will be arguing next month before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals on behalf of the state. Next month, the Solicitor General is also going to be arguing before the Fifth Circuit to defend the Walker-Montgomery Protecting Children Online Act. The harms to our children, as you all know, are manifold. The sexual predators, the reinforced behaviors like cutting and self-harm, the assault on our daughters, our children, their body image, self-esteem that lead to eating disorders and depression, cyberbullying, and certainly sextortion. The criminal act that led 16-year-old Walker Montgomery, for whom you named the bill, to take his own life. The parents asked you for help and you responded. And the big tech companies couldn't afford to let your principles prevail over their profits. And we stand with you in defending this very important law. Two other examples I want to note here because they're extremely significant. We successfully defended the state of Mississippi's sovereignty in a case where the federal government sought to impose its will on our state's provision of mental health services. Instead of living under the yoke of Washington, D.C., this body and the Mississippi Department of Mental Health will now be able to determine how we meet and fund the mental health needs of the people of this state. We also successfully defended House Bill 1020, creating CCID criminal court in both state and federal courts. You all, the legislature devised a very innovative strategy for addressing the judicial backlog and the crime problems here in our capital city. And we are very grateful. But it was challenged by numerous parties simultaneously in state and federal court. But we met those challenges and we emerged victorious. Furthermore, when the CCID opens later this month, our prosecutors will be there ready to practice. Over the last several months, our civil litigators, we've been defending the law. Our criminal prosecutors have been working with the AOC and other parties to establish for this court the rules, the schedule, the technology, the physical layout, and the mechanics of this new court and how it would operate. So we're excited to see it in action coming up. And just a few other important cases that are significant that this office handles for the state. Judicial and legislative redistricting cases. The Leadwater case against the state and the city of Jackson. The enforcement of the state's reverter clause for the Smith-Wills Stadium. The DOJ's investigation of the state's prison system. And in this case, like the mental health case noted above, is another with broad implications for how this state creates policy and how we fund our prison system. And we have been, again, in court defending there. It's also worth noting here, too, that there are a number of cases where this office has been very proactive to stop the current Biden-Harris administration's rules from impinging on our state. A notable example is Title IX, that the administration proposed a rule last year. It's significant because that rule had broad impacts on our state, requiring our schools to permit biological boys in our girls' bathrooms, in our girls' locker rooms. The rule is an affront to the SAFER Act that you passed last session. It sacrifices our daughters, their opportunities, their safety, their privacy. This radical ideology belongs to that current White House. And it was a lawsuit led by the Mississippi Attorney General's office that stopped that rule from taking effect. This office filed the very first lawsuit. They got the injunction against the rule for all of the nation, and we won. What's more, pressure generated by Mississippi and other like-minded states that the administration, we got them to back off of that provision that would have directly compromised our girls' sports. So this administration, the current administration, has been very steadfast to forcing their rule to compromise our girls' private spaces. I'm hopeful with the coming administration, our litigation will come to a final conclusion quickly. But if not, our office is prepared. We're ready to defend the SAFER Act as we have in the past, to support our schools, our parents, and to protect Mississippi's young women. As we saw the need, we also created our new Children's Justice Division. It's been an active partner with the Child Protection Services as well. A team of 18 attorneys and paralegals of the Attorney General's office cleared nearly 596 children in foster care last year alone were released and available for adoption in 2024. That is significant. These are children, and we're able to work through these attorney positions, and we're so grateful for this funding that you gave us. And we've certainly continue to look forward with our work with Commissioner Sanders and her team and all of you to continue to have the pathway where we can get these children streamlined into forever homes very quickly.
And on that, I personally have heard that is working. That coordination with those attorneys in those courtrooms and all that is, I've heard very positive things, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are excited about that and seeing those children be placed in those forever homes. And you know quite well, we have about 4,000 children, so the more we can move them into forever homes, it's always in the best interest of our children. I'd like to highlight just a moment too about our Consumer Protection Division. It's been very proactive in enforcing the state's consumer protection and antitrust laws. This division is at the forefront of big tech, big pharma, which we all know puts profits over people. I noted the work that we've done in 340B with the prescription, but I want to talk about this other corollary case that Mississippi has led the nation on. We started a national movement of taking on the PBMs and the manufacturers who reap astronomical benefits on insulin. That drug must be utilized by about 350,000 Mississippians to live. They need the insulin to live. So this has been very important as we've taken that on against the big pharma. The work has also been the forefront, as I said, on social media platforms. It's been important because we see the harms that they do to our children. Again, in that hands-on effort with what the legislature's done with the Walker Montgomery Protecting Children Online Act, I just want you to know we have taken on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We've taken them all to court in an effort to get these companies to do what any responsible corporate citizen would do. They should not turn a blind eye to the harms that they knowingly inflict on our children, the physical safety and the mental health of our children. So that's important for us to continue to take them on. Of course, our consumer protection team has also taken on the work that you gave us exclusively in 2023 to enforce our telemarketing laws. And in 2024, we investigated 1,943 complaints about illegal robocalls and robotexts. Let me switch gears for just a minute to responsibilities in criminal law, which is an important part of what we do in the agency. We have prosecuting responsibilities as well as appellate ones. It's the Attorney General's office that takes all felony appeals, whether it's from prosecutions that we have of our own or from any of the state's 23 district attorneys. This includes all the death penalty cases, including the habeas proceedings. And in the past year, that meant nearly 600 appellate filings, including several at the United States Supreme Court. Our prosecutors do a variety of cases, including Medicaid provider fraud, abuse, neglect, and exploitation of vulnerable adults, child exploitation online, human trafficking, public correction, and election integrity. Beginning in July 2022, the legislature, you gave us the responsibility of reviewing and prosecuting all officer-involved shootings throughout the state to the Attorney General's office. There have been 82 instances since then. We've closed 40 of those cases, including the most notable, the Rankin 6, which resulted in jail sentences for 5 Rankin County Sheriff's Office and 1 Richland Police Department law enforcement officers. And as noted earlier, we'll soon be prosecuting in CCID. But we don't just prosecute crimes. We investigate crimes in this office as well. Again, a large portion of what we do. Our investigators field thousands of criminal complaints each year. Just to kind of give you an overview, in the last year, we had 2,818 complaints came into our Medicaid fraud control unit. 6,306 tips came to our Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force. And that's an increase of 1,000 more from what the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children referred to us the year before. 5,658 complaints were received and investigated by our Public Integrity Division. And that represents a wide variety of crimes, from election integrity to human trafficking to fraud. So we've had more than 14,000 consumer complaints were handled by a combination of our law enforcement investigators and personnel and our trained consumer mediators. We've seen that it's important to establish a number of task forces as well, through which we work with our local law enforcement. We work collaboratively. We do operations together, because this is a force multiplier for us. If we have law enforcement working together, that's an impact in a positive way for all of the state of Mississippi. So in addition, to the state's Internet Crimes Against Children, which partners with 80 law enforcement agencies across our state, we also have created the Cybercrime Division, which runs the state cyber fraud task force. Let me tell you why that is so significant. Cyber is important for all of us. We established the Cyber Fraud Task Force in 2021 through a cooperative effort with the United States Secret Service. We established the task force and became a part of a huge network of 40 domestic and international cyber operations. In 2024, our Cyber Fraud Task Force was instrumental in the financial recovery of more than $2.5 million from Mississippi victims. In 2023, we established the Fentanyl Strike Force. Over 400 law enforcement officers have been trained to fight the fentanyl epidemic. As we see as part of the Fentanyl Strike Force, it's important to come together and have everyone working to fight this epidemic. And our fourth task force is a Human Trafficking Task Force. To date, we've certified 516 law enforcement officers, conducted 56 multi-jurisdictional operations, made 86 arrests, and most importantly, we've recovered 331 victims, 21 which were children. We're also charged with training. Our office trains prosecutors, law enforcement, judges, and other partners in criminal justice. Last year, we conducted 141 trainings, which accounted for 154 training days, and we had 5,797 partners were trained. The legislature assigned the Attorney General's office the duty of conducting this training because certainly the whole state benefits from a strong, well-trained criminal justice system. Further, we serve the state's criminal justice system by serving the victims of crime. Our Bureau of Victims Assistance provided advocacy and compensation to 1,158 individuals who were impacted by the criminal acts of others in the last year. And as we administer the Victims of Human Trafficking Commercial Sexual Exploitation Fund, which was created by the legislature in 2020, it's important as we do that. In the first 2 years, we distributed more than $4.6 million in this funding. We'll soon administer the third year of grants to shelters and other service providers across our state. Through this funding, for example, we've established new shelters for human trafficking victims, including the first shelters for child victims. I wish we didn't even have to have that. We are working to help those victims. We're grateful to be your partners in helping Mississippi's victims of crime become survivors who deserve to get back into society without any shame or blame. You'll note that this year's budget request includes another appropriation request for a fourth year victim service provider grants. We believe because of our outreach and our prosecutors have been so successful in this outreach, we currently have about $1 million in the fund, and we have asked for less money for the general fund in FY 2026, but with the expectation that we'll be able to distribute the same amount of funds in the year. As I said, this office also offers counsel to state agencies, boards, commissions, all public bodies and officials through official opinions. In 2024, we published nearly 100 such opinions. By providing consistent legal advice and counsel across the state government, we protect the state's overarching interest. Before I finish on my testimony, I just want to mention one more thing. I want to thank you all for the passage of the MAMA Act. The MAMA Act, the Mississippi Access to Maternal Assistance Program. Here from the legislature is one of Mississippi's greatest successes in meeting the needs of women and family in recent years. The Attorney General's office is very proud to manage this program. We began with no state appropriation, and we launched the website, the mobile site, and we've had more than 56,000 visits to the site. 56,000. That's incredible. We've added more than 400 public, private, and faith-based resources to MAMA. We certainly appreciate your providing us with the funding from last year, and we'll ask for some more funding of 50,000 because we can continue to outreach to these mothers, to these families, and make a true difference. But we certainly need that additional $50,000 to keep our website and the success rate continuing. And as we continue to offer these services to our most vulnerable, our women in need, and our children and our families. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today. I thank you for the opportunity to allow me to give you information about your Attorney General's office and all the great successes and accomplishments and representation that we do. And thanks to each of all of you for what you do for our great state, for all the people that call our great state home, and the businesses that make our economy run. But for all of you, thank you. And I appreciate this opportunity to be your partner as we serve the people of the state of Mississippi.
Thank you, General. I've two quick questions and then I'll turn it over to any member. Child Advocacy Centers, CACs, which are a partner in prosecuting crimes. There is, as I understand it, funding, and I forget the name of the fund that has gone through the Department of Public Health. It's FOCA, but there's Whitney, are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I see.
Yes, and my understanding there's issues or whatever, but that your office is willing to take that on and I guess even combine it with your victim services office to allocate those funds. And my understanding is it's 2 million that was going, I guess where I'm headed with this is it could be transferred to your office to do that. And Dr. Edney doesn't have any objection as I understand it. Do y'all have any objection to that?
No, Mr. Chairman, we already enjoy our opportunity to work with CAC. So yes, we'd be more than happy to.
Okay. And then, and I'll talk to, I guess, Gregory. I have some questions on the officer involved shootings and some stuff that maybe we can be looked at from a statewide grand jury type thing, and I'll just mention that I think it was brought up last year that is something that could be looked at from a statewide grand jury with the Attorney General's office being overseeing that. So I'll work with your staff and get with him on that. I'm going to turn it over. Questions from the committee? Yep, Senator DeBar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, General Fitch, for appearing here this afternoon. A quick question. I seem to recall that your office was involved in some opioid litigation, suing on behalf of the state. Has that matter been resolved and settled, or is that litigation still ongoing? And if so, if it's been resolved, what was the resolution to that?
Yes, thank you, Senator. Absolutely, we've been involved with that, and there has been some resolved agreement on that. So there are monies that are coming into the state now. There'll be hopefully some legislation that you all will look at that we can pass and set up the board to have oversight and have those monies getting out and being proactive and helping those in need across our state. And it's set up on different plans over 18 years, depending on how the settlement agreements went. But there are certainly monies that we need to be
How much
working.
money are we talking about? What's the settlement amount? Do you recall?
With their different timeframes that come in, I'm going to probably guess just kind of an overview of what we can quantify right now, about 140 million.
Okay, so
But over 18 years, it's a
Okay.
breakdown that you get in.
you recovered roughly $140 million for our state, spread out over 18 to 20 years, whatever it may be. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator. And then we have some continued ongoing, so we'll have some additional settlements that we'll
Okay.
be adding to that. So that's why it's kind of hard to give a complete number on it, because we're excited we're going to have continued settlement numbers coming in.
Is that money going to be returned to the general fund, or is there a special fund that we've established for that? Do you recall?
That's a great question. The bulk of the dollars have to be used for abatement, which means they have to go into the opioid prevention, protection, enhancement, education outreach. And then there's a small portion that can be utilized by the general fund.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, General Fitch.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Senator.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Norwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Fitch, you mentioned in your presentation that you have a challenge maintaining attorneys based on the salaries. Now, all of the attorneys that are working in other agencies, do you hire them? You have attorneys assigned from your office to work in other agencies, correct?
Yes, sir. Oh, thank you. Senator, we have restructured to operate as we are the largest law firm in the state. So now we have different groups that provide, if they may be in the finance group, they may be in the education, so that we can readily respond to any agency, board, or commission that might need, representation.
Now, but by the same token, agencies are allowed to hire, I mean, they have attorneys themselves that may work within their agency. Am I correct on that?
Yes, Senator, they hire independently outside of the office.
Now, those salaries were, and you're saying, I think somewhere in there you said that those salaries may be higher than you are able to pay the attorneys that are employed by your office.
That's correct. We
So you may have-
need team members to other agencies who can pay higher for their attorneys. But again, we have nearly 130. And so that's why I would ask for some additional funding so I can bring my attorneys up to SEC too.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, General Fitch.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay. I think that's it. That's it for that. Right on time. So thank you, General.
Thank you so
And
much.
we will get these prepared as we go forward on appropriations. Thank you.
Thank
you. Next is going to be district attorneys.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kalen McCoo, and I have the pleasure of serving as the president of the Mississippi Prosecutors Association. And so therefore the representative.
What area are you?
I'm in the 4th District, Washington, Sunflower, and LaFleur counties.
Gotcha.
First of all, thank you all for the opportunity to be here. And I think it's beneficial as far as explaining the budget proposal, which was created by DFA, to the background of the DAs not being the typical agency. Obviously, it's 23, what we would consider to be mini agencies, all receive the appropriations through the same budget. But as far as once that is given out to the different districts, each district is run differently on how they use it. Now, obviously, you'll look at the bulk, or I think about approximately 93 or 95% of the budget is going to go to salaries and fringe benefits. And that's for our statutory employees, which are going to be the DAs, assistant DAs, and the investigators. Now, out of those 23 counties, each county has its own, districts. Each district has its own number of counties. There's a district with as small as 1 county. And I think the largest district county-wise has approximately 7 counties. And so the DAs, ADAs, and the investigators are kind of allotted to the different districts based on the population of that district, in addition to the cases that that district handles. And so that bulk, like I said, 93% of that goes to the salaries. The remainder goes to the office expense account. I believe, if I'm correct, the number is 50% base for each of the 23, $50,000 base for each of the 23 offices, and then an additional $4,000 per statutory ADA. And I say statutory because some districts who have counties who have the resources are able to procure funds from those counties to hire additional prosecutors as well as additional investigators.
And does this budget request include investigator salaries and or increases for investigators?
This one does not. There have been some conversations, and there may be some proposals or seeking some legislations for that.
Yeah, my
That is not
understanding.
included in this proposal. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my understanding is that's I guess prosecutors' number one request is raises for investigators.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's not in this proposal.
That's not in this.
In the event that that is something that is dropped, that we would, work with DFA and the committee and other members to reflect that if that needs to be in this particular budget, because as those details are worked out, we don't know what that amount will be, when it will take effect, and we'll plan to work all that out in the event that that legislation is proposed. And so this, as I mentioned, the expense accounts are starting at 50,000, 4,000 per ADA, and those again statutory ADAs. After that, what the different DAs that are elected do with that is kind of independent. So I'm not able to intelligently speak, as a matter of fact, generally about what happens with that. My understanding, however, is that I believe DF state retains that, and that is available to be reimbursed in the event that the district attorney's office, have expenditures that they need reimbursed by the state. But our overall budget request is actually down, a reduction from last year. My understanding is that was a result of some temporary positions that were allocated previously that will be reach their end of life coming up on the next fiscal year. And so the overall budget request is down. And with that, I think I'm open to any questions that that the committee may have for me.
So I have a couple questions. So are y'all asking in this budget, asking for an increase in positions?
No. So the budget proposal as it stands now reflects the amount of statutory ADAs and the amount of statutory investigators that have already been allotted as of now. So we're not asking for any additional spots for ADAs or investigators at this point in this budget.
Okay. What I'm curious, what tends to happen, we worked with the prosecutors the last number of years over assessing, or not assessing, but allocating ADA positions throughout the state. And that, in my opinion, that's worked well. I periodically have some DAs that go outside the Prosecutors Association. You're the president of the Prosecutors Association. And I understand that, once the money, each DA's office operates independently from that, but my question is, are you familiar? You nodded your head, so clearly you're familiar with that.
Yeah, familiar with those specific acts that are outside of what we do, and also just familiar with, I guess, the kind of the unique structure of the Prosecutors Association, being that I believe we have 100% membership from all 23 offices, but that's not required.
Why did they go out of the MPA and press upon us to add to their particular division or their particular office?
I can't speak to their intent. I would imagine that knowing that there's a limited pool of funding, when you have 23 different agency heads, that there could be an assumption or an understanding that it has to go somewhere. And so one person may feel that if it's coming to them, it may not come. And so that's kind of the unique position that MPA is put in is that we're.
In other words, you
all
got
prosecutors.
23 strong personalities, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, and I figured that's why y'all didn't call all 23 of them up here today. But that's kind of the unique, you know, juxtaposition that they're put in, is that knowing that it's all coming from the same pool, they each have their own different independent needs, and you can kind of get into, you know, some troubled waters if you try to represent all of them, you know, to the fullest extent. And so they do. We have our meetings and we have our proposals. For instance, we agreed on the investigators, and years ago, I think there was a proposal for additional ADAs, and that worked its way through and came out. And so there are things that we agree on, and then through the legislative process, it changes. We do understand that if we put forth a proposal, that it could change in the end. But as far as going outside of what the entire body agrees on, that's, again, they're elected officials. We can't stop them from doing it. And it's really not MPA's position. Once we support all prosecutors elected, appointed. And so if they do decide to do that, it's not really our purview to try to, you know, curb them from doing it.
Yeah, but y'all, as an association, y'all meet and
Yes, as
say,
an
hey, these are our
association.
priorities. And in this case, this year, it's the investigators, is what I've been told.
Correct.
Okay.
And just for some background, so the association, like I said, I believe we have 100% participation as far as you know, who's a member, but as far as actually participating, I wouldn't be able to confidently say every time it's 100% of all 23. And so it's just a matter of our board meeting, deciding what the association's priorities are. And so in the event that either conflicts or something different from an elected DA, that's probably when you may see, hey, let me call my local, you know, person and see what I can work out. But again, we don't come out against that. It's just we support whatever that they're trying to do in the event that it does not conflict with what the association has decides to do.
And so on that, and I'm not getting into all that here, but if you want to say anything on the judicial redistricting, because we've been working on that certainly last year. We've got to do that this year. Do you have anything you want to weigh in on that?
Not at this time. It's not something that again, you know, with the board and being, you know, elected for the entire association, unless we agree to speak as one and articulate one idea, you know, I may be seeing you, you know, in my independent capacity, but as MPA president, we don't have anything on that right now, Mr. Chairman.
And what is the increase amount that is being sought? For the investigators, I'm sorry. Do you know? Well, it's not in.
One diligence. Okay. Be a total of 785,000. And
For the
applied to
investigators?
all statutory and equally to all statutory allotted investigators.
With the current statutory.
Well, a lot.
allotted
So
amount.
we're not increasing the number of investigators. That
Right.
amount will be spread across what's already allocated in the statute.
Okay, and the increase, and it's my recollection that, yeah, there hadn't been an increase for investigators. And just, by the way, just like the Attorney General's office said, and I don't know that everybody actually understands it, but just like the Attorney General said, they have investigators in their offices, the DAs have investigators in your offices.
Yes.
Individually, that you investigate crimes depending on what the case may be. And they haven't had a raise or an increase in at least 5 or 6 years, if I'm.
Yes. Yes. And part of the conversation was that at some point, even prior to that, there was some connection to their salaries to, I believe, the captain's pay with the highway patrol. And at some point that there was a disconnect. And so the intent is, while not to match that right now, just to kind of get back and trending in the direction to where they're adequately compensated, because we've received complaints from a lot of our DAs that they're losing them to some of these. You see the municipalities and other counties with, you know, starting salaries for their police officers that are way above, and they have unlimited overtime. And so it's just a matter of adequate pay, like you said, that they hadn't had to raise in some years, and also recruitment and retention.
Okay. And I'm looking here and like so many of our agencies, PERS is, and health insurance is an issue that you have to cover.
Yes.
Okay, questions from the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir, for being here. Refresh my recollection. What is the pay for investigators and what would this raise? Will it take it up to if
I
it's
believe they're currently at 64, approximately 63,000, and the raise will take them about 75.
75? And they think that's competitive with the other investigators throughout the state then?
Yes, it's, I don't, again, some of the more well-funded municipalities and counties is not quite there to that
Okay.
standard, but it is higher than what, what they're getting and something that would, adequately allow us to retain them and recruit them and quality
That's correct.
investigators and
Okay.
not lose them to some of these other agencies.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Norwood?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the reduction, in these, well, for the, what, ADAs, did you all do any type of assessment, to determine it was effective or and it was no longer a need for that, or it was just the extent of the dollars, expiring?
I believe the original intent was just after COVID, there was a backlog and they were inserted to kind of resolve that backlog. And the understanding now is that they are either trending toward resolving it or they're caught up. And so there's no longer a need for those specific temporary positions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks.
And just one last question I have is, I think you alluded to it. This budget is the appropriation for the state provided positions for assistant DAs. There's also within the statute allows for counties to have allocation for so many slots, but that's paid for by the counties.
Yes, those are either paid for by the counties within a certain district or from some other funding that is not from the state.
And y'all aren't asking
That is,
that in
no,
this.
this budget would not touch any of those positions.
Okay, all right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I
Appreciate it.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, well, that concludes today's budget hearing. I will make a quick announcement. This committee's meeting at 9:45 tomorrow morning to take up the remaining budgets that we have. And it will be in concert with Senator DeBar's budget in light of the weather that's going on. So we will be meeting tomorrow at 9:45 in the morning rather than at 1 o'clock on that. So with that, we're adjourned. Thank you. Is this committee?